Okay. Up next, we have Isaac. So, Isaac has been with AppNexus for a very long time, and he's building Parakeet and Microsoft's privacy ads solutions. Excited to hear from you.
Cool. Thank you. Going second's interesting because you have just enough time to realize that you might have targeted the wrong audience with your presentation, but not enough time to do a darn thing about it. Yeah, for us Microsofters, we really need a lot nicer than that. But anyways, we'll do the best we can. All right, so I'm here to talk about Microsoft's ad selection API, which, like Beth just said, we've been working on for a while. It is definitely something that we've done as Edge's version of Privacy Sandbox. Clearly, a lot of similarities. We'll dive in more on that. But the theme that we've been really pushing ourselves and trying to remind ourselves to think about is keeping an open heart to private advertising. Fledge and private advertising, and this is where I'm wondering if maybe I have the wrong audience here, but you guys probably know they're not the same thing, right? Fledge is first through the wall on targeting in some private way. It's a first step. I think Michael Kleber would say that if you could give him truth serum and get him at a bar, that type of thing. But there's a lot of opportunity here. So to Beth's point, I've been working for AppNexus and now Microsoft for about 12 years. Definitely there's a lot that we in the ad tech side have been a little afraid of here, but I think there's some optimism. So we'll just do a quick group therapy, which I think given this session or this group maybe is a little, we'll skip that, and we'll jump into the technical details. I really do think that for ad tech and for browser folks, we're all humans and we're all very different. There's a lot of different priorities and language and knowledge. And I think when I'm in a lot of these IAB meetings, as I'm sure some of you guys are, there's a lot of latent sort of suspicion, a lot of latent frustration. And I think a lot of that kind of comes down to things you would say in couples counseling, right? Like you're hearing, but you're not listening. Should we really be working together to try to work this out? And by the way, I'm not sure who in this analogy would be Tony and who would be Carmela, but that's whatever. You guys can make that decision for yourself. We really think Google's done a lot of good work here, and we think there's a lot of good with Privacy Sandbox and Fledge in particular, which is mostly what we'll focus on here. Again, being first through the wall is just always going to be super tough. But the private advertising isn't just limited to that. There's already existing stuff around data clean rooms and IPA. And I think one of the things that's a really great opportunity is that there's new patterns that we have to get used to on the one hand, but that we can take advantage of on the other hand with confidential computing. It really is a challenge for those of us who are more on the business, product, engineering, operations side. So I think a little bit of therapy between the cookie monsters in ad tech and the birds who are doing the confidential computing is necessary here. But we really do see a lot of opportunity to improve the curve, right? So if you look at the trade-off between privacy and utility, yes, that trade-off will always be there, but we think we can make it a bit better. And we think Google's had a great start there and that we want to help push it forward. So let's just dive in on the ad selection API. So I think I've got my most Microsoft-y slide here. I need to put this in, but anyways, I'll just jump to my next, we can talk to me after class about this one if you want, about the flow. If you're familiar with Privacy Sandbox, the flow is very similar. But here we go, ASAPI details, yeah. What's different about ASAPI ad selection API versus Fledge Privacy Sandbox? And this goes to some of that reason for optimism, right? We see a lot of good, and then if you can just be a little creative in how you solve some problems, we think that there's a lot of opportunity to open up. So for one, the privacy model, we think opaque processing, transient processing is great, but we've taken the position that it can be okay to share cross-site signals in a opaque and transient process, right? So if this thing is in memory, it's on I'm forgetting the name of the hardware, it's on a trusted execution environment with whatever the protections are, SGX9, I think, whatever, doesn't matter. That's okay, and consumers might make a choice to say, I prefer this one over that one, but we think from a threat model perspective, that can be okay. We're looking at server side only instead of server side or client. As you mentioned, Google has made some steps in that direction with trusted execution environments. The Edge folks have been kind enough to listen to us, and I think the thing that they heard was ad tech is all about low latency, high scale, operations. You get up at 3 a.m., you fix the thing, right? It's much harder to do that. I don't know if we're quite ready to move to a billion node distributed system, which would be having ad tech run all the time on browsers everywhere, as opposed to moving things to the server side. I think if what we're looking at is can we Wassamize our operations, probably figure out some stuff on the debugging side, which to be clear, we're aware there's challenges there, definitely challenges there. So we got a lot of work to do there. But I think if we can frame it as that, as opposed to as here's this domain model, here's this topology, you have to go in this direction. I think we can potentially get to a better place. Again, we're not saying we're done yet, we're perfect, but we think that's a direction that's workable. And then also a deeper integration with ad tech. I do want to give credit where credit is due. I know the Chrome team has tried to reach out, and ad tech, including myself, maybe didn't engage as much as we should have early on, but I think we've had the advantage of they went through the wall first. Some of our integrations with something like, hey, we're used to doing defaults. We can do noise. We can do defaults as noise sometimes. That's totally fine, or better than the alternative, right? So what this has opened up for us, by the way, I have no clue how I'm doing on time. I'm terrible at this. So, okay, cool. So, what this has opened up for us is a few things, and just to go through a couple. So, improved targeting, right? So, if you can mix those signals in an opaque and transient process, then you can target more effectively. On the sell side, you can do so. Right now, on the privacy sandbox side, you're evaluating one ad at a time, score ad, return a number, highest one wins. That prevents you from doing things that we're all used to on single page calls, competitive exclusion, page caps, roadblocks, a couple other things. So we want to enable, or we are enabling that with this, again, slightly different model. Some of that deeper integration and ability to noise with something like defaults, we think opens up something like a multi-size, multi-slot. And then a big one, just for which this is in some ways a small thing, but it's massive, is not having to pre-declare your creatives. I promise you that's very challenging. There's a lot of other things, but I think this kind of hits the high level. Again, the privacy model, we think this is an important conversation to have. I think Privacy Sandbox is a step in the right direction. I think we should talk about that privacy model, talk about how can we integrate better to open up some features. We're really interested, the Edge team's really interested, and I believe the Chrome team is as well. And I guess I got my slides out of order, so this is the last one. So this is, am I getting close to 10 minutes, I'm assuming? I got more time? Oh, okay. Okay, then in that case, for this audience, I'll go back. Sorry, I must have gotten things out of order here. So given that this is an ML discussion, I figured I should at least give some nod to that. So we very intentionally did not publish anything in our first round on some ML stuff. We have some diagrams. My diagram's not here. Very intentionally, if you'd like to see me after class, I'm happy to show you, but presenting it in any official way is not something that we're ready to do yet. But again, going back to what you said, you can imagine that there might be some progress on the idea of saying we like the idea of having this opaque transient processing. Maybe we can open that up a little bit and have a learning environment, an inference service. If you've seen the protected app signal service, the one that the Android folks has put out, maybe something similar to that can interact directly with a trusted execution environment KV server. So that way you can have signals, and potentially even very granular ones, or somewhat granular ones, let's say, that are going to stay in this closed loop. We definitely have stuff we need to figure out there with differential privacy and all like that, but which is why I don't have a diagram here. I thought about putting one in. I couldn't find a generic enough one. So happy to talk about that after class. I think I'm actually out of slides now, so I'm hoping I'm close to 10 minutes. And here's my Chat GPT bloopers that didn't quite make it in, but I thought were worth showing. Thanks.
Adoption rates.
I don't think they liked my presentation.
I'll be back, I promise.
I don't believe you. I don't know.
How much coordination is to be expected with the Chrome team, or maybe it's IAD Tech Lab on some kind of standard, especially for...
Yeah, you're making me realize I forgot a really important word. So we did make this API compatible. Obviously, devil's always in the details with little issues, but I think we realized pretty early on when we all started talking about this again back in June of last year, the original Parakeet stuff that would be so different, we're not going to get adoption if we do that. So in terms of it being compatible in that way, so we're already doing that very intentionally. I think in terms of coordinating, Microsoft and Google coordinating is an interesting word, and I certainly, we have not been, and I don't think we intend to, but we are certainly aware that it takes two browsers to be a W3C standard. I think the folks on the ad side, which includes me, are very well aware. Look, one could say third-party cookies may not have been that great to begin with, maybe better than nothing, right? We're keenly aware that both on targeting and measurement, we're better off if we can all move forward in the rubber band together, but certainly no coordinating, or at least not inappropriate coordinating. But we're all in the meetings together. We were all just in the PAT-CG face-to-face last week or 2 weeks ago or whatever it was, and I think we'll continue that type of open discussion.
Machine learning talk, like in the Chrome world, you choose your audience, like it's an interest group for a particular ad, in advance, executing and targeting that ad. In the SAPI or ad selection API world, is there a chance to do that after the fact, where you can just set a bunch of interest groups and then potentially learn which ones are good for your campaign later?
That's a good question. I guess I'm going to parrot something that I've heard some of the folks on the Chrome side say before. We're trying to build APIs, and how people use them is obviously up to them. But the intention to not force pre-declaration of the creatives to allow for that to be a bit more flexible, even though we'll still apply canonymity on the way out, still the differential privacy and canonymity output gates. It would be fun to talk through that. I think it would allow what you're suggesting. I think different companies are using interest groups in different ways. For some, it's basically a way of activating an ID in an auction. For others, it's actually more the canonical, what was initially thought about with an interest group of this describes shoe intenders or car intenders or whatever. Our intention is that you will, again, choosing words very carefully here, it'll be ergonomically easier for you to plug in bidding logic that is updated more quickly, and you still have these privacy output gates, and you can use those APIs in creative ways. But again, the differential privacy and canonymity will still be enforced at the appropriate points to ensure all the mathematical guarantees that we want to get. So, not sure if I totally answered your question, but that's probably the best I can do in this context. Then we can dive in more. I never say yes. That's just not a thing that I'm allowed to do.
How's your timing for the end of the year? I'm from Criteo. I'm a big fan of what you're doing. I think it's a great.
You can stop right there.
So my first question is Microsoft has an unfair reputation of being a little slower to get things to market. How do you look at the timing?
I think you're right that it's completely just unjustified that Microsoft has that reputation, and I have no further answer for you. No, I'm kidding. I think we are, we've got some dates out there. I think it would be really great for folks to register their interest in conferences like this, coming to the biweekly meetings that we've been having. Public/private declarations can be of many different forms, and I think we've got a really good team working on it right now. And I think, why don't we talk more later?
We're excited. And the other question is, have you skied the Baldy shoots?
Yes.
Okay. Very good. Well,
yeah, pretty good. Yeah, I apologize for being so overdressed, by the way. It was a complicated 24 hours, but
it's an alpha thing.
Yeah, it's a skier thing. If you're a snowboarder, just don't worry about it. Yeah, we'll catch up later.
Great.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.